Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Fork. Our minister, the Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, leads the majority of our services. On days when she is not available, one of our worship associates leads the service. Today is one of those days. I am Mark Potter. Our musician is Abigail Fleming. Carl Wittenberg and Kent Martin are tech experts, and Monica is bringing all of this by camera into Zoom. Please, if you're on Zoom, please direct your technical questions to them through the chat. As Unitarian Universalists, we follow no creed or doctrine. Here we strive to respect the inherent worth and dignity of every being, to honor each person's search for truth and meaning, to encourage peace, compassion, and justice for all nations, all races, all colors, the people of this world. In our actions outside this meeting house, we strive to help those in need, the homeless, the hungry, and the neglected. The only salvation we offer is right here, right now, a community of loving friends offering comfort and guidance. The few rituals we follow in this gathering are symbols of hope, that these principles may gather strength in our own hearts and beyond the walls of our meeting house. The songs we sing elevate these principles to bind us emotionally as a community. Wherever you are on your life's journey, whatever your name for the sacred, you are very welcome here. So let's begin with announcements. Next week, September 25th, we begin our Building Bridges program. It's a world religions program for children 8 to 14. If you know a family with a child who might benefit, please contact our minister. In our service that morning, our minister, Reverend Kimberly, will be here at the podium to lead us in a child dedication, where we join together to commit ourselves in caring for our children. You can find more information about how to connect to events this week in your e-bulletin and on the events calendar on our website. Please get any information you would like to announce to the congregation to our administrator by Tuesday of the week you would like them announced. She will include them in our e-bulletin. Are there any announcements that anyone would like to make? Okay. Do we have any visitors who would like to introduce themselves? Welcome, Eileen and Betty. If you're visiting over Zoom, please sign our virtual guest book using the link in the chat, and someone from our Care and Connection team will be in touch with you. In your chat, you can also find a link to today's order of service and the lyrics to the hymns we will be singing together today. Our opening words are by Jason Cook. We seekers are on a quest to discover truth and meaning. Sometimes we think we have found it, wrapped up, glimmering with newness, straight off the intellectual assembly line. But truth has a way of coming in disguise, sometimes wearing rags and sometimes finery, but often cloaked from our immediate sight. And sometimes that which we have rejected, that which we have let go of, or decided was only for others, but not for us, can be our teacher. Let our time of worship be an acknowledgement of the never-ending journey toward truth and meaning, and our appreciation of those we learn from along the way. And now, Sue, would you like the chalice for us? These words are from Deborah Falk. The chalice lit among us is a beacon of hope in a world of crisis, a beacon of possibility made manifest in community, a beacon of warmth through our interconnections, a beacon of light illuminating our shared wisdom, a beacon of connection by our being together. Please rise as you are able. We'll sing the first 3 verses of hymn number 298, Wake Now My Senses. For those of us who have reached old age, it is easy to forget how lucky we are to be living in this time and place. The European foundation of our culture here in America has not always been so gentle with the elderly. We know that Medicare was not available until 1965. I'm not sure what people did before then. If you were poor, you died early. But when I considered our European folk tales, the old crone who fattened up Hansel and Gretel, what is an old crone? A shriveled up old lady, I'm afraid. And what was her fate? Hansel pushed her into the oven, if I remember correctly. And where there was an old crone, there was a geezer like me. But Hansel and Gretel was one of the more benign folk tales. Some are astonishing. Here's an Irish folk tale which my mother never shared with me. This one is called Half a Blanket. Once upon a time, a tailor lived in a shop with his wife, his son, and an old grandfather, a geezer. The house was very crowded, and Grandpa was getting on their nerves. The tailor decided that his father must move out and live somewhere else. When the day came for Grandpa to move out, the tailor decided to give him only half a blanket. His wife pleaded to give Grandpa a whole blanket. They quarreled bitterly for days, until finally the tailor agreed to give Grandpa a whole blanket. But the grandson did not agree. No, said the grandson to his father, give Grandpa half a blanket. I will need the other half, Father, to give to you on the day I decide you must move away and live somewhere else. The grandfather stayed. The next story is Ukrainian. It is why people today die their own death. Once it was so on earth that the old people were killed. He is old, they would say. What good is he? Why should we feed him bread for nothing? However, one son had pity on his father, and instead of killing him as required by law at that time, he hid him in the cellar and continued to feed him. A famine came to the land, and the people ate all the stored grain, even the grain that had been set aside for seed. The old father, seeing the great need, told his son to thresh the straw from the roof. They had a thatched roof, of course, and to plant the seed thus gleaned. The son did as he was advised, and the seed grew immediately, miraculously leading a quick and bountiful harvest. Everyone saw it was the old man's wisdom that brought the unexpected crop. And from that time forth, people have been allowed to die their own death. Are we lucky? I guess so. Last winter, a few of us old folks, crones and geezers, got together via Zoom to share our wisdom with each other. We called the program Aging with Grace. Liz Dwyer, the director of Southampton Senior Services, described the services available from the 3 towns out here on the East End. David Holstein helped us understand financial opportunities and risks. Martha and I told what we have learned to work with doctors more effectively. And John Andrews described the lessons he learned caring for his parents. Michael Daly helped us with real estate. And Sue Penny discussed friendship and the important emotional side of our lives. Today, we'll each share a little of what we learned, how to arrive at old age, and how to enjoy it when you do. I hope we show ourselves as wise and as practical as that ancient Ukrainian grandfather. May our roots grow deep. May your branches spread far. May we find the world to be a wonderful place and leave it better for those who follow. Now it's time for our offering. We support the work of this congregation through the gift of our time, our talents, and our treasure. Your financial contributions help to support the ongoing work of this congregation, including worship, religious exploration, community care, and connection. And your generosity is reflected in the ways we are able to show up in our community for justice and service. Our Helping Hands Fund provides support to local organizations, and our Minister's Discretionary Fund provides support to individuals in need. If you're online, you can contribute right now using PayPal with the link in the chat. You can also send a check made out to the UCSF and mailed to our PO box. Be sure to put Sunday offering in the memo line. And of course, joining us in person, you can use cash. Now we'll listen to an offertory song. Thank you, Abby. Now is the time in our community of shared faith when we share the deep joys, sorrows, and concerns of our hearts. If you have a joy or a concern to share, please unmute yourself and share your name. If you're joining from the phone, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. And if you have a joy of concern here, you can come up and light a candle, speak at the podium. And now let's empty our minds of these sorrows, fears, and joys with no prayer or wish for something different. In this empty place, for a moment or two of silence, welcome life as it is, as it comes to you. The sun, the bird song, the clouds, the coming autumn, the friends around us. Please rise as you are able to sing hymn number 203, All Creatures of the Earth and Sky.
Voices
It's so great to sing all together here. The last winter and spring, we held a mini lecture series over Zoom, which we called Aging with Grace. Did it make me feel more graceful? Not so much, but I learned plenty from it. And this morning, we will share the best of it with you. We began with Liz Dwyer from Southampton Town Senior Services. She opened the series. From her, we learned that both Southampton Town and East Hampton offer a wide variety of public services for seniors. There's a shuttle service for people who don't have a driver living with them. They offer home-delivered meals, an adult daycare program, residential repair services for homeowners and renters who are over 60, online learning, and help with medical care. And you can find all about this. You just have to ask Google for Southampton Town or East Hampton Town Senior Services, and you'll see what's there. The repair service sounded particularly interesting. I know, it's often hard to get even somebody to answer the phone when you call for help. Our second talk was from David Holstein about money. Now, David couldn't be available today, so I'm going to read his piece as if I were David. My father was a baker. No, he didn't own a bakery. He baked cakes and did decorating of birthday and wedding cakes at the Main Street Bakery. He was a self-taught, savvy investor. He was adamant about a few things. You should pay yourself first. You must save something from your paycheck. You work hard for your money. Your money should work hard for you. 3, there is no such thing as free advice. Everyone is selling you something. Therefore, you must be a knowledgeable consumer. I always ask myself, okay, there's advice. What is that person trying to sell me? You should never invest in something you don't understand. A corollary is, if something is too good to be true, it probably is. Finally, you should only invest money you can afford to lose. You need to have adequate savings for the proverbial rainy day. David's dad's common sense rules are a good starting point. Let's look at 4 things that help complete the picture: time horizon, diversification, risks, and goals. No one can tell you what will happen in the financial service markets tomorrow, but we can make a fairly good forecast of what will happen over the next 5 to 10 years. A long-term investment horizon is key to not worrying about the daily volatility of the market. It helps avoid making bad decisions at the depths of pessimism or at the heights of optimism. Tune out the daily noise and think about the trends that have staying power. Second, diversification is as simple as not putting all your eggs in one basket. You're looking for investments that don't move together in response to economic or political events. Currently, real estate would be a good example of an asset that continues to go up in value while stocks are floundering. Financial markets revolve around the fight between greed and fear, the desire to make lots of money versus the fear of losing money. Determining your own risk tolerance is extremely important. Finally, you need to invest with a goal. We all know this. We have saved for goals such as purchasing our first car, college, a home, retirement. A goal helps maintain our focus on the long term and so maintain our sanity as markets go up and down. And the final thing to mention, a bit off topic, but important, is scams. Please be aware that there will always be individuals looking to prey on you, and they're getting more and more creative every day. It happens to all of us. In retrospect, the scams are obvious, but at the time it happens to you, not so obvious. If you are scammed, you feel awful, and the impact stays with you for some time. So be skeptical of that unsolicited call, that unsolicited email, and be on guard. David, thank you for your good advice. And now Michael Daly has something to tell us about real estate.
Good morning. And while many of you have heard me talk about real estate in the past, and today is really less about real estate and more about housing and more about our culture. You all know that I'm available to talk to you at any point in time, and I donate 10% of my net income every year to nonprofit organizations, and anyone through the congregation who I'm here to serve, ultimately 10% of anything that's earned will be donated to the UU as well. So that's really the bottom line on the real estate talk. But I wanted to, I put some thoughts together about how cultures view and treat their elderly. And it's really very close to our values and traits. And Mark has talked a lot about this, but in China, there is literally an elderly rights law where people are required to never neglect or snub elderly people, and mandating that they visit their elderly parents often. Japanese culture also expects children to dutifully tend to their parents. In France, there's even a law. It's difficult to imagine such an elderly rights law being a legislative priority in Western cultures, but France did pass a similar decree in 2004, requiring its citizens to keep in touch with their geriatric parents. Mediterranean and Latin cultures place similar priority on the family. It's commonplace for multiple generations to live under one roof, like my big fat Greek wedding, sharing a home and all the duties that come with maintaining one. In the contemporary iteration of this living arrangement, the oldest children often are relied on to assist with caring for the youngest. The oldest generation is often relied on to assist in caring with the youngest, and the breadwinners labor outside the home. They remain very integrated. The US and the UK, Protestantism is at play. Western cultures tend to be youth-centric, emphasizing attributes like individualism and independence. This relates back to the Protestant work ethic, which ties an individual's value to his or her ability to work. And I see it in, being 64, almost 65, seeing it in some of my friends who are in their 70s and approaching 80. They are very reluctant to admit that they can't do certain things anymore. And it's because of that desire to appear youthful, that desire to appear independent, that desire, and we don't value our aging as much, and we don't value the fact that we can't continue to do a lot of the things that we have done over the years. Anthropologist Jared Diamond, who has studied the treatment of the elderly across these Western cultures, has said, the geriatric in countries like the US and UK often, all too often, live lonely lives separated from their children and lifelong friends. As their health deteriorates, the elderly in these cultures often move into assisted living facilities and nursing homes. Another interesting point here in the US is that a whopping 75% of all high school students have used alcohol, tobacco, or drugs, according to a disturbing new report in the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse. A full fifth of those teens are reportedly addicted. So 20% of 75% are addicted. According to the study, the earlier folks abuse drugs or alcohol, the more likely they will become addicted. I recall my upbringing where my grandparents lived either with us or earlier in an apartment just on the floor above. And I can remember my grandmother banging the broom on the floor when she wanted something. And one of us dutifully ran up out of the apartment, up the stairs. Yes, Grandma. I want tea. Okay, Grandma. God help me if I had ever come to my grandmother with alcohol on my breath or even cigarette smokes, the smell of cigarettes on my breath. She couldn't have caught me, but I wouldn't have gotten away from her because the hook would have come right out. Or if I had, when you come to your grandmother, they look right in your eyes, right? If I had ever come to her with a dazed look in my eyes, there would have been an intervention right there and then. My three sons, Michael, Patrick, and Cooper, also lived with or near their grandparents, my mother, my father, my aunt, until their deaths. And while their mother and I's marriage did end while they were preteens, I'm thoroughly convinced to this day that they turned out to be such good boys because they never wanted to dishonor my mother, their grandmother, my father, their grandfather, or our Auntie L. A woman named Muriel Gillick wrote a book, The Denial of Aging, Perpetual Youth, Eternal Life, and Other Dangerous Fantasies. With passion and compassion, Gillick chronicles the stories of elders who've struggled with housing options, with medical care decisions, and with finding meaning in life. She skillfully incorporates insights from medicine, health policy, and economics, and she lays out plans for individuals and for communities. So, most provocatively, Gillick argues against desperate attempts to cure the incurable. Care should be focused on quality of life. Communities should focus on quality of life, making sure that there are safe places for everyone in the communities. And now I'll go over to what Ken was talking about recently. East End YIMBY has been talking about housing choices, and many times people, when we talk about senior housing, they say, "Oh, don't worry about it. They're fine. We need it for workers." And we keep knocking on the door to have senior housing options. Recently, we completed a survey of East End voters to assess their views of community housing measures that are in relation to the November ballot on the Community Housing Fund. The study found that there's a clear path to victory for these measures in November. We're going to need your vote. Vote yes on community housing in November. But we're going to need to run a strong campaign in the final 6 weeks. While voters are in a negative mood generally and lack trust in local government, voters value the benefits of providing affordable housing for first responders, essential workers, teachers, and seniors. Finally, we got validated. Seniors, people want senior housing. So we're going to have an opportunity to vote on that in November. I ask for your vote, and in between now and then, we also are running a campaign, which I'll leave some information in the back. And we need donations to that campaign. We've got to we had an event yesterday where we raised $20,000. We've got another 80,000 to go. So there's an opportunity to donate to this campaign as well. And we need to create our communities with more senior housing. So thank you.
Thanks, Michael. And of course, if you're going to enjoy your old age, you have to keep yourself as healthy as possible. Martha Potter gave some thought to how you can get your best from all the doctors we have to see.
Hi. As you know, I see a lot of them. As we age, many people are faced with difficult health decisions. Most of you know Mark and me. We are energetic, active people, but behind this, we are dealing with the daily effects of cancer. I first was diagnosed 20 years ago after a routine mammogram. I didn't have breast cancer, but unusual swollen lymph nodes and an elevated white blood count. A very competent GP diagnosed my condition as Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia, a rare blood cancer. Later, through my own research, I found an institute at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute that specializes in this cancer. I continue to take oral chemotherapy and infusions for my immune system. I also consult with a specialist at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, where new discoveries have helped me control the cancer. Mark was diagnosed 12 years ago with chromophobe cell cancer, a rare and slow-growing variety of kidney cancer. One kidney was removed, followed by multiple surgeries and chemotherapies. Researching again, by the way, I was a history teacher, so researching is my thing. Researching again, I discovered that a scientist at Dana-Farber was studying his cancer. She suggested a regime of chemotherapy that now seems to be controlling the growth of the cancer. We learned many lessons through our experience. Foremost, find out about your diagnosis and where the most recent research is being done. If you are using Google, skip the ads and look for clinical trials and reports from hospitals. Mayo Clinic is a particularly good site. Some practical advice. Always bring 2 people to all important appointments. One to listen, one to take notes. You often hear different things. Keep a dated journal of visits, treatments, and side effects. The dates are particularly important to understand the sequence of events. Ask for a second opinion. I was lucky to find an energetic, creative young doctor. This is not always the case. Accept you are ill and ask for help. This is hard to do at the beginning because you want to downplay the seriousness of your illness. Postponing treatment because you believe you know more than the doctor can be dangerous. Fear is your first instinct. There are constant changes in medical treatment today. Admit you are sick. Find out more about treatment for your diagnosis and look for the best alternatives. My sister died in 2001 of a blood cancer like mine. New treatments have saved my life. Find a local doctor for maintenance. Traveling for every treatment is too tiring. Make sure this doctor is willing to work with specialists. Protect your quality of life. Mark and I travel when we have the strength between treatments. Our doctor, we now share a local oncologist, realizes that our psychological well-being is as important as our physical state. Trust your instincts. Do activities you love. I love to garden, and I garden all the time. Mark loves woodworking. We both love to walk our dog, and we do every day. If you are working, try to make arrangements and continue. It is good for your soul. I was teaching when I was first diagnosed, and my district assigned me a permanent substitute. She would come in when I couldn't. A colleague gave me a wheeled stool so I could move around the classroom to help my students. I like to walk around. I was teaching 7th grade at the time. When I moved to high school, I had many of the same students, and they dedicated their yearbook to me. We all learned how to deal with adversity. Don't hesitate to involve your family and friends. When I was first diagnosed, our children were beginning their jobs and families, and we didn't want to interfere with their lives. When Mark was diagnosed, our children and our grown grandchildren were wonderful support. Most of all, know that you are in control of your life and are capable of making good decisions. That's what we learned over 20 years, and I hope it helps a little bit.
Thank you, Martha. And now John Anderson will describe what he learned while caring for his parents.
Well, I had a thought when Michael was talking about his grandmother pounding on the ceiling. There was a little story. My brother, who's older than me, if that's possible. Uh, Lives in one town in Indiana, which was 90 miles from where my parents were living at the time. And one day he gets a call from my mother saying, "You got to come right away." So Tom dropped everything, gets in the car, races the 90 miles, conjuring up all sorts of bad things that could be going on that my mother would need him so urgently. And he gets there and he says, "Mom, what's the matter?" And she says, "I'm out of cigarettes." My brother was not happy. Anyway, happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. That's the famous first line of Tolstoy's novel, Anna Karenina. I'd only add that if being a happy family means there are no issues, no stresses, no misunderstandings, then there are no happy families. Grown children often recall times when their parents came across as domineering and self-righteous. Parents can view their children as thoughtless and ungrateful. Most children have more to be grateful for than to criticize. But to prospective parents, I'd only say, if gratitude is what you want, get a dog. But cutting to the chase, here's what I've learned. Communication is key. Death and decline are hard to bring up. For parents, these things are getting too close for comfort. As for the kids, they don't want to upset their parents. They have kids of their own to worry about now, and they may fear that the parents might think that they're just after their inheritance. A thoughtful conversation is needed. Parents may need to initiate it. It should include an honest assessment of family relationships, how the parents are coping or not, the parents' final wishes, the kids' other responsibilities, disagreements among siblings over who is responsible for what, and last but not least, finances, wills, and directives. Whether you are on the older or younger side of the fence, it's hard to open such a conversation. Here's a suggestion. Say you participated in a discussion group on adult children and aging parents, and they suggested you start a conversation on parents' wishes and children's perspectives on the inevitable fact that as we age, our capabilities change, and it's better to talk about this before an immediate need arises. If you're listening to this now, it won't be a lie. Here's a checklist on the parents' situation. Are they both living or just one? If both are living, are they living together? If they're living together, are they happy with each other? What's their physical health? Can they manage the usual tasks of self-maintenance? How about mental health? Do they suffer from depression, dementia, loneliness? And don't forget spiritual health. Do they show wisdom, compassion, and equanimity? Or are they overcome with delusion, anger, and resentment? And are they living in a secure environment? If not, what needs to be done to keep them safe? Parents should provide their grown children with information they'd have a hard time finding on their own. I had to ask my mom and dad who their lawyer was. After they died, I had to comb my dad's filing cabinet to find out anything about their financial information. The takeaway is that communication is key. There will come a time, whether before death or at its final moment, when communication will no longer be possible.
Thank you, John. And now Sue Penny will wrap up for us with some advice on how to enjoy these wonderful years we've all been given.
As I've gotten older, I think I've dealt with aging like most Americans, which is to not deal with it. A Jungian therapist, as in Carl Jung, Michael Conforti, said he believes this country is a young country, and therefore we are young psychologically.
He believes as we age, we need to shift from engagement in the outer world to the inner world. It is our duty and necessity to focus on ourselves. The privilege of a life is to become who we really are. At this point of life, we hope to have built a nest with resources to carry us into the final stage of life. And we can ask the important question, what is my soul calling me to do with my life? As Carl Jung himself said, the afternoon of life must likewise have its own meaning and purpose and cannot be made to be a miserable appendage to the morning. I love that quote. It seems the decline begins sooner than we think, late 30s to early 50s. In Arthur Brooks' book, Strength to Strength, he says we go from fluid thinking, which is our raw smarts of thinking flexibly and solving problems when you can generate lots of facts. Basically, all inventions happen at this stage. Then we evolve to crystallized thinking, which is the ability to use that knowledge learned in the past. That increases with age and doesn't diminish until much later in life, if at all. Success in aging is being able to jump from one intelligence, the fluid intelligence, to the crystallized, and devote the back half of your life to serving others with your wisdom. Okay, so there's no way around loss in aging. We need to deal with the two sides of aging, freedom and loss. In death, we are alone. In decline, we shouldn't be alone. We are like the aspen. We picture them as strong individual trees growing separately and dying alone. Wrong. It turns out each tree forms an enormous root system. In fact, the aspen is the largest living organism in the world. This ties into the Buddhist belief that the self is actually an illusion. We are all intertwined. To believe in our separateness leads to an increasing feeling of vulnerability and insecurity. The secret to our bearing our decline is to be more conscious of the roots linking us to others, because we all go through this stage of life if we're lucky. So we need relationships at this stage of life beyond our spouse and children. This is an antidote to loneliness. A romantic partnership is important. However, it is neither necessary nor sufficient to prevent loneliness. In fact, research shows there is no difference in happiness between seniors who are married and those who remain single. I believe we are gathered here today because we know we need one another. As Forrest Church says in his wonderful book, Love and Death, we need guidance in recognizing our tears in each other's eyes. We need companions in the work of love and justice. We need and know how precious life is and how fragile. It is true that few of us are unafraid of death. It is the ultimate mystery. I say we need to read about death, talk about death, watch movies about death. It all helps to desensitize us and even make us more comfortable with the idea of dying. So this stage of life is definitely not for goofing off. We have much work to do.
Thank you, Sue. And now I've got to return this to Abby. For those of you on Zoom, the meeting will remain open for a few minutes after service for informal conversation. But if you have any questions you would like to address to the speakers, please send them to me at mpotter@optonline.net. I think you'll find that in the chat. And I'll make sure we answer them. We'll do our best. For those of you in the meeting house, we invite you to join us with the speakers in the fellowship room for light refreshments and fellowship. If you are visiting for the first time or the 50th time, if you're in agreement with our values, our mission, and our principles, we hope you will find a home here. Now let's rise as we are able to sing hymn number 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. Thank you. That's great. I chose this closing because as I age, I find I have many, many more things I want to share with my parents who now are gone maybe 20 years. This was written by Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are, in spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go, remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to live mightily, to bow to the mysteries. So we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts into our together again. And now Abby will lead us with, thank you, Sue, to sing the Pete Seeger song, Turn, Turn.
Yes, please. I love hearing your voices.